What's up, everybody? My name is Jason Creel, and welcome to the live stream, whether you're watching live or watching on recording. I used to do these more often. I haven't been on here for a while. This is on my YouTube channel, and my channel is called Lawn Care Life. I've been on YouTube, I think, almost 15 years doing lawn care content. And I talk about helping people with their lawn care business, but also do a lot of stuff out in the yard, showing people how to take care of the yard, make it look good. So I thought, why don't we come on here and do some Q&A? And before we get started with that, I'm just gonna just talk about what's been going on with me, and then give some people time to join the call. The way this typically works, if you have a question, go ahead and post it on the right side of the screen here. It shows me your question. I'll respond in order. So you're welcome to ask me about anything with your lawn care business or your lawn, whatever you want to do, and we'll see how long we'll stay on here, depending on how engaging the content is and how much you guys want to talk. So I'm in Alabama near Birmingham. It got cold today. The high of today is like 40, super windy, and going down to 21 degrees or something tonight. So that's one reason I'm on here doing this. I'm trying to finish up my lawn care applications that I'm doing, hopefully by Thanksgiving, and out spraying a pre and post emergent application, trying to knock out the weeds. So, but I thought, not today. I'll try it again tomorrow and see what the weather looks like. A couple things been going on. One, last week I went to the Elevate conference. It moves around. It was out in Phoenix, Arizona. I've never been to Phoenix, and we had a good time out there. I was with it, doing some videos for a company called InView, which makes Spectacle and Celsius and some of those products. And Phoenix, there's no grass out there hardly at all, and just cactus. I found out it's illegal to touch the big cactus. So I didn't find that out by touching it. I just was told that it was illegal. Jeff says, we got snow here in Indianapolis. Then Mule. Oh, hey, Jason, Jeff W. from the group. Oh, your name's Mule. Okay. Well, we'll see you hopefully on the call tonight, Jeff. I have a little mentor group. We get together every other Monday night, and we've got tonight we're talking about ride-on spreader sprayers. So I'm kind of looking forward to that because I think it's practically helpful. But I didn't know Jeff W. goes by the name Mule, so that's good to hear. Anyway, I was at the Phoenix show, and if you've been to Equip Expo, which I go to it most years, and it's great, and it's obviously huge. I think it's like 25,000 people. But this Elevate conference had a little bit different feel to it. It was like a trade show. There was booths set up and all that, but not nearly as big as the other one. It was probably companies that make a lot more money. Just to be honest with you, I didn't go around and ask people how much money they make, but it was pretty evident that these were larger companies, and there was a lot of teaching going on. You could go to all these different seminars. I didn't go to those because that wasn't the purpose of me being there. But anyway, it was fun. It moves around. I forget next year. I'm thinking it's going to be in Tampa. But anyway, Elevate is what it went to. But I think I'll probably go back to the Equip Expo next year, and I may go to the Elevate too. I'm not sure. Anyway, Frankenlawn says, thank you for all you do. I enjoy your herbicide comparison videos. Have you ever compared a single herbicide without ammonium, with and without ammonium sulfate as an adjuvant? No, I don't think I have. But I think, sometimes just wondering, sometimes I do wonder, like adding surfactant, what kind of difference does that make? I think I've been told it makes a significant difference, but I don't. Right now, I'm actually spraying Spectacle and Simazine. I didn't put a surfactant in there. I was like, but typically I do. But no, I was talking to somebody the other day about killing Dallas grass, and they say, yeah, use ammonium sulfate with your tribute total and 3 applications. I believe at least what they said. Let's see, illegal to kill the big cactus. Yes. Well, I've heard that if you have a car wreck and you hit the cactus, that you can get a ticket for that. Touching it is illegal. So I did see them. I didn't touch them. Let's see. I'm not sure what that comment's about, except with golf balls. Maybe it's something I said. Anyway, so just want to take some time to say first before I do that, I want to say today this live stream is sponsored by Yardbook. Yardbook, for those of you know, they've been sponsoring me for years. I was using Yardbook before they ever started sponsoring. I've been using Yardbook since 2015. And you go to you get a free account, yardbook.com. And I find it to be super user friendly. I mean, people call me and want me to switch to some other software, and I'm like, I'm not saying I never would, but I don't have any reason to at the moment. Maybe if you get to be a big business, I can see there's probably some advantages to some other softwares, but it really does what I need it to do. And it's one of those deals, like I'm so familiar with Yardbook and knowing what I need it to do for me that I'm not interested in switching around. So anyway, all right, you guys, if you got questions, ask the questions. If not, I'll keep talking. Let me just go through kind of this year and what I did and what I'm probably going to change moving into next year. One thing I did in 2025, again, I run a weed control and fertilization business near Birmingham, Alabama. So in 2025, I was decided that I was going to use, instead of using prodiamine, I used the generic version of what's known as SureGuard. And SureGuard is what I use in flower beds. So I spray SureGuard mixed with glyphosate, and it's excellent on flower beds, keeping the weeds out. And you can't spray it over top anything. You got to just spray around the shrubs. You don't want to spray it where you're going to plant flowers. There's some limitations, but I did that. Well, turns out you can use it on dormant Bermuda grass. And I used the high rate on dormant Bermuda grass. And unfortunately, I ended up with more crabgrass this year than I've had in a long time. Now, I heard mixed reviews on if you're going to use the SureGuard or the generic version, do you put the prodiamine with it or not? And in fairness, I did not put the prodiamine with it. But next year in 2026, I'm just going back to prodiamine in my early application to get ahead of the crabgrass. So that is something I probably wouldn't do. Something I did this year that I was pleased with, I used Dismiss and methylfuron, which is, basically like making your own blindside, I guess you will. But I used Dismiss and methylfuron early. I did it actually before the grass started turning green. The reason I did that, I didn't want to risk leaving any turf burn. I was using 12 ounces of Dismiss per acre, which is the high rate. I didn't want to leave brown tire tracks, which can happen sometimes if you're on a ride-on spraying a high-rated Dismiss. There's other factors, I'm sure. But I just wanted to do it before the grass turned green because I just didn't want to risk that. Well, it was a bad year for sedges because we had a lot of rain early in the year, not so much late in the year. And I tell you, I feel like I got really good sedge control. Now, I did two things. So I don't know exactly which one made the biggest difference. I did that, the Dismiss and methylfuron, and that supposedly helps. And then I came back later and I blanketed a lot of my yards with Southside, which is the active ingredient that's in Certainty and also has methylfuron in it. So I did that. And when I spray methylfuron, I do really low rate, like 1/4 ounce per acre. So anyway, I did that, and my sedge control I thought was excellent this year. So crabgrass control, not so great. Sedge control, excellent. So I'm going to touch on a few of these questions here. Joseph says, thank you for all your lawn advice. It's been helpful in maintaining my lawn. So, sometimes the homeowners watch my channel and what I think I try to do is just like, hey, most people are not going to go buy all these different products and spray them on weeds to see which one works the best. If I can spray them and just show you which one works the best, I think that could be helpful. Jeff/Mule says, what do you do with your sprayer to protect from cold weather? Yeah, that's a good question. Saturday, it got down to 20-something last night. So Saturday, I was scrambling around because I'm out spraying still. So I don't want to I still need to use the equipment. So what I did, I've got RV antifreeze and my Z spray and my other small ride-on machine. I went ahead and ran the RV antifreeze And the idea is you put it in there in the tanks. That's one thing, but you need to run the pumps a little bit and get it flowing through the pumps and the hoses and all that. So I went ahead and did that on my 2 ride-ons. On my tank sprayer on the back of my truck, I didn't want to do that because I want to be able to still use it tomorrow. So I was like, I don't want to put a bunch of I don't know how much antifreeze you need in there, but so I just winterized those. I went ahead and you don't have to empty the tanks. I'm not worried about the tank, the fiberglass tank. That's not the problem, but it's the pumps. And I learned this the hard way a year or 2 ago. I let some stuff freeze up. So I do that, and I do, just because I have other stuff in my workshop and it's not insulated, I do have a couple of heaters, one mounted on the wall. So I'll go ahead and turn those heaters on just to, I don't know, getting cold doesn't help. But the other thing, I think, and I actually forgot about this until I remembered the other day, I think I bought some heated blankets at the end of last year, and if so, I just drape those over. And they're not like heated blankets we're going to use in our house. I bought them specifically for this. So sometimes I'll just drape a heated blanket over the pump and the tank and everything, or mostly the pumps, and turn that on. So a lot of those have a timer on it. So seeded, Wallace says he seeded new Bermuda lawn last year, just starting to come in. Oh, okay. Just starting to come in. Yeah, I was like, when did you see it? I thought you had to do that in the summer. I saw one thing that's pretty cool at the Elevate conference. There was this company, they make a roll of fabric. You think about hydro seed and stuff. This was a roll of fabric that has the seed and the fertilizer and something else in there. But basically, you put the fabric down and you water it, and it just kind of clings to the dirt, even on hills and stuff. Now, I was talking to the guy, he had a lot of cool season grasses, which might germinate in 7 days or so. He said the Bermuda might take 21 days, and usually do it when it's hot. So it's a lot more difficult. So congratulations, Wallace, on getting the Bermuda to grow. That's somewhat of an accomplishment. I told people I've never known anybody that successfully grown zoysia from seed, but actually one of my customers did it. It didn't come in great, but it's after a couple of years, it's halfway looking decent. To answer your question, 3.5 inches, I would probably leave it longer. I think when it's not that established, so I wouldn't want to stress it out by mowing it low. 2, I think leaving your Bermuda lawn, whether it's a new lawn or an established lawn, is going to do a little bit better job of creating a canopy that might keep the weeds out a little bit better. So if you scalp it back down, you're going to be able to see bare dirt and stuff. So I probably wouldn't touch it, and I would let it go until, I don't know where you live, but maybe, March or April next year. And then you just kind of baby it. And once it gets going next year, if it's Bermuda, it should be fine. Wallace says, I blanket sprayed it with Celsius Certainty and MS Temp last month going into winter. Was that okay? I mean, when you say new, I don't know. I'm assuming you seeded it in the summer. Typically, the rule of thumb is you don't do much anything until it needs mowed twice. So, I don't think that was necessary to do that, to be honest with you. I would have just let the heat kill out whatever weeds you had, or I'm sorry, the cool weather. Now, Houston, y'all should get below freezing, I would still think so. I would have probably not done that, but I doubt you damaged it too severely, to be honest with you. All right, hold on here. Let me find my place. Thank y'all for asking some questions here. You don't want to hear me ramble on about nothing forever. How does SureGuard compare to Fusillade 2? Corey, you may have to help me with the Fusillade 2. Is that my understanding of Fusillade 2? Is that the one that a lot of times people are mixing? What's the combo that people mix now to be able to get Bermuda out of zoysia? You can take Fusillade 2 and you mix it with Recognition, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you take those two, you mix them together, and it makes it where it won't damage the zoysia, but it'll actually kill the Bermuda. And I heard that it works. Okay, I'd like to see that from my own eyes. So that's my familiarity with Fusillade 2. I haven't used it personally. So to answer your question for flower beds, he's asking how well does that work? I don't know the answer, but I will say I used to use freehand. There's freehand, there's SureGuard, there's maybe Preen is one you might see in the big box store. Those are granular pre-emergents you kind of can put over your flower beds and just spread it all over everything. I got away from that because for two reasons. One, you still had to go back, like in the warm season lawns, you still got Bermuda grass running up in the beds or zoysia or whatever it is. It still runs up in the bed, even if you try to maintain it with a trimmer. So I thought, well, I'm still having to go back and spray the glyphosate on the kill these existing grasses that are running up in there. So I found once I switched over and started using the SureGuard and the glyphosate, I could just go over it one time. Now again, I can't spray over the shrubs and all that, but I found the results to be just really, really good. I've got one customer, he's got a bank with just thin pine straw he might replace once every other year, and it's a lot of open space, and that's ideal for that SureGuard because I can go in there and spray it and it just stays clean. Even a thick layer of mulch or pine straw would help a lot. He doesn't do that, so even with a really thin layer, it's been very good. Run into a grassy weed called blue stem. I've heard of that weed, Corey, but I'm unfortunately I don't think it's one that I have in my area. Well, fortunately, I guess. But anyway, my wife's texting me on here. She's I don't know if she don't know I'm on a call, so I might have to just text her back later. Running into a grassy weed called blue stem. I don't have that particular weed. I think, if I'm not mistaken, somebody was asking about that in Texas. But grassy weeds in general, what I like to use is Tribute Total, as well as, I put Dismiss in there. That's what I'm using for Dallas grass and things like that. So that particular weed, I'm not familiar with. I'm like 0 for 2 on Corey's questions today, so I'm not helping much for him. Mary says she doesn't have any questions, but she wanted to say thank you. I love the channel. Learned a ton from what you've shared, and thank you for the videos. I know it takes time. Thank you, Mary, for letting me know that. I do appreciate positive feedback every now and then. And thanks for watching the videos. Is it okay to apply liquid image in cool weather on southern lawns? Image, I know, has been around a while. It's not a product I use a lot. I would, Lawrence, if you could tell me what are you trying to, you have to check the label as far as that goes. What are you trying to control? You know what I'm saying? There's probably probably cheaper options depending on what kind of weeds. If you're going after warm season weeds, you might let the cold weather kill them, depending on where you live, if it gets cold enough. If you're going after cool season weeds, there's probably better, cheaper options. But to answer your question, again, without checking the label, I think the answer is yes, but I think there's probably a better option. How do you deal with knotroot foxtail? Yeah, it's a pain. It really is. It's one of them weeds, honestly. It's like getting to the point where if I knew a yard had those things like broom sedge or tons of Dallas grass or knotroot foxtail, like if you bid on the yard in January and you don't know, like I got one customer, his yard's just covered with knotroot foxtail. If not familiar with it, there's like annual foxtail that I see a lot, and the knotroot foxtail doesn't have quite as prominent of a seed head on it, but it's hard to control. But I'd spray it with Celsius and it suppresses it a little bit, but unfortunately I don't know how to kill it. I've actually I got this little metal thing that's called a Pro Plugger. You may have seen them. They're like for plugging grass or planting bulbs or something, but it takes a little, kind of like a golf hole size plug out of the lawn. Then you can take that and go plug it back into another part of your lawn. Well, I've got that thing, and I've actually thought about just keeping it on my truck. And if I went to a yard and they had like 5 knotroot foxtail, I thought, why don't I just keep a bucket of topsoil in a 5-gallon bucket in the back of my work truck with this Pro Plugger thing? And if there's 5 not root foxtails instead of 500. Just go through there with that pro plugger and just pull the things out of the ground with a plug, and then take the topsoil and fill in the hole and just be done with it. Same with broomstick, but I don't want to do that if there's hundreds of them. It's just a pain, but it's a terrible weed. How do you go about gaining customers in the beginning? I'm new to the business, but I do have a website. If I can just can't gain any traction. I mean, it's going to be tough probably in November. It's hard to do much of anything in November unless you bought out somebody. You could reach out to people that are trying to get out of the business or have too many. You make it work something out. Of course, you need to be a little bit careful with that too. The other thing I would say on your website, I would go ahead and get a Google My Business listing and try to get some reviews if you can. It doesn't look great when somebody looks at your website and you have 0 reviews. It's not great. There's other reasons why you want to get reviews, but to me, that would be the biggest reason. I think you can do some things that are free. Like I always tell people, when I started a weed control business where I'm at now, I started going on Facebook in these local groups, and I would search for the keyword lawn, and I would see people that were searching for lawn care, and they say, hey, who should I get to mow my lawn? And I'd go on the comments, I'd see all these people commenting, call Joe's Lawn Service, all these people that a lot of them didn't have websites. Well, I started reaching out to those people, and I wouldn't post on there a lot of times. I would just reach out to the people that trying to find who's all in the lawn mowing business right here. Started contacting them and developing relationships with them to start sending me the business. Now, again, it's hard when you start out. I understand. It can be discouraging, but once you get going 2 or 3 years in, a lot of times the problem is not getting customers, but it's how to be profitable with the customers you have. So I would encourage you to, try not to get discouraged, try to build relationships. You can be active in those Facebook groups. Some of the local groups allow you to post once a week or so. So try to do that. And, if you want to, I don't know if you can pay somebody to do search engine optimization so that your website eventually will rank well on the internet, which that's not an overnight thing. That can take some time, but just something to consider. So building relationships and being active on those are, and other things you can do is like door hangers and things. That's no fun, but the reality is it's just very difficult in the winter, but I would certainly be ready and make sure I had everything together and a good image for my business come February so that you're ready to go when the spring rush hits. Corey says he just uses Fusilade on flower beds. I know there's Fusilade too. I'm not that familiar with them, but that's give me something to think about. So thank you for that. Do you mentor someone in turf county located in the transition zone dealing with cool season grass? I'm just a warm season guy. We do, as far as our mentoring group, most everybody's warm season grass thing. We got one guy in South Carolina, but I think he's over in the area where it's mostly centipede grass and Bermuda. I wouldn't be a lot of help on the cool season lawns, just to be honest with you. But I'm sorry about that. We can help you on the warm season lawn. That's just what I deal with. Would you ever get back into mowing? Probably not. I think actually thinking about editing a video here that I might post later today. That's why I quit mowing grass, or maybe I'll post it more. Or quit mowing. I don't think mowing is bad. I didn't make it work well for me. It was fine for the time being. I find it very difficult to scale. And in the video, I mentioned that it just was very challenging to come anywhere close with the winter income, unless you're like snow plowing up north. Even in the South in Alabama, like we're not mowing year round. Like people are done mowing. It's 20 degrees tonight. Like there's no grass to mow. Now you can get out there and do different, leaf cleanup jobs or, stuff like that. But it's not it's just hard to make the same amount of money in a day. It's not as profitable as, in my opinion. Now you don't have to have near as many customers. You can obviously there's mowing companies that are making lots of money. Okay, so I'm not anti-mowing. I'm just saying for somebody who wants to be small like me, I feel like you better opportunities with the weed control, but it does take a little bit long to get going. I don't miss the mowing. I do enjoy mowing my own lawn. And the people I know that were doing both and stopped mowing, I saw a guy about a month or two ago, and he had just quit mowing and was doing both. Somebody said, "Do you miss mowing?" He said, "Oh no, he didn't miss it at all." So that's where I'm at. What about Q4 Plus? I have Corey. I'm just no help for you today. I'm sorry. I'm familiar with Q4. And I actually, at that Elevate conference I just went to, I was talking to the guy that for Q, is that PBI Gordon product, I think. But anyway, I was talking to the guy about Q4. I was like, is that, I feel like people use that more with cool season turf. He's like, no, it can be used for warm season turf. I just don't hardly know anybody around here that uses it. I know it has quinclorac in it. It's kind of a all-around product. It can kill a lot of stuff, but it's not a product I'm very familiar with. Jeff says he's a warm season other than overseeded winter lawn. So yeah, I think he's the one in South Carolina. So there's, I don't, there might be some areas of South Carolina have some cool season lawns. Do you add insect and fungus control in your program? I started adding insecticide this year just because there was a problem. The last few years, whether it was 3 years ago, like the world worst year for armyworms, to last year, when I say last year, I mean 2024, it was a terrible year for chinch bugs. So I started building in the insecticide into the program. Fungicide, I do not. It's rare that I see. I mean, I see dollar spot all the time, and I guess I should probably offer that as like an extra service. If you don't want dollar spot, we can spray and make you not get dollar spot. But as far as like big brown patch and all that kind of stuff, I don't see that a whole lot. All right, Corey says, what do you suggest for aster? Let me look it up because let me ask you, Corey, where do you live? Because I'm not helping you with anything. And I don't, that's not a weed I'm familiar with. I looked it up and it shows a picture of a purple flower. So where I would love to know what state you're in, because we must be living in two different worlds as far as the weeds and the herbicides. MSA kills Dallas grass and goosegrass, right? I know it kills Dallas grass. I'm assuming it kills goosegrass. I mean, it's not legal on residential properties, and if you use it, it needs to be hot weather. In Bermuda grass, it'll just about smoke everything else. So Corey's in San Antonio, Texas. So if anybody can help Corey, because I've let him down today and I can't help him with his weeds he has. I'm assuming San Antonio. I'm thinking you're probably St. Augustine and Bermuda mostly would be my guess out there, but I don't know that. So just in general, if you are, Corey, I do use a lot of change up for broadleaf weeds and like change up in metsulfuron. Obviously it's hot in San Antonio. But to me, that's a very inexpensive combination that you can use to knock out a lot of cool season. Just a lot of broadleaf weeds. And as far as grassy weeds, I'm trying to obviously use pre-emergence when I can, but I also want to keep tribute total on my truck. Now you can't use that on St. Augustine. You've got a lot of that, but I use that with dismiss, and that's when I'm out there spot treating tough grassy weeds with that combo. And I just keep it for spot treatment for the most part, especially in the fall. Like if I've got Dallas grass, I'm out there hitting it with tribute total and dismiss. If it's in the spring, that's what I'm spraying. So again, just for spot treating. If the Bermuda goes dormant in the winter and it gets some warm weather and the Dallas grass starts, and I'm saying Dallas grass, no, that's not what you're asking about, but it's a tough grassy weed. So that's sort of a tough grassy weed combination that I'm using. I want to say one thing, welcome to ask any more questions if you want to. While I've got you, I do use a company called Footbridge Media. I had a guy, one of the marketing guys on here on my mentoring group not too long ago. He was great. But if you were looking to get a website over the winter time, I think he said when you start doing your search engine optimization, it can take 6 months to a year, something like that, to start really showing up on the search engines, which, website without showing up on search engines is not overly helpful. But if you go to Footbridge Media, you just Google that. If you go to the bottom of the homepage, you will see a link for Lawn Care Life customers. I'm sure there's a link I could do for that, but I don't know what it is. But you go down there at the bottom of the page and click on that. The normal price is $249 a month. Now, they'll build your website, do your search engine optimization. A lot of times you pay several $1,000s to get a website, and then you got to do search engine optimization. And it's just, now it's ongoing, so I understand that. I'm not saying it's $249 one time. It's ongoing, but they are very professional. They do. They work with service businesses. They call and check in with me. So if you want to get a website, which for me, I said if I only had $200 a month spent on marketing, that's what I would do. The regular price is $249 a month with my affiliate link, and it is an affiliate link. Then it's $199 a month. So anyway, if you want to get a website, you can check out Footbridge Media. Go to the bottom of the homepage, click on the Lawn Care Life link, and you'll get that rate. Or if you call them, tell them you want the Lawn Care Life $199 rate instead of the $249 rate. Jeff says he seconds Footbridge Media started right after Christmas, and they had me at the top of Google for my area by March. See, there you go. There's a testimony. Michael, good to hear from you. He says, thanks for all you do, Jason. Keep up the good work. Michael's over in Georgia, if I remember correctly. And good to hear from you. Trying to think. The other thing I did different, and if y'all got more questions, go ahead. The other thing I did different this year, I started doing a split fall application. Here's what I learned about that. Okay, tell me if it's right or wrong. I used to do 6.5 ounces of spectacle. Now this is on Bermuda and Zoysia lawns. I used to do 6.5 ounces of spectacle in September on into October, and I would mix with it 32 ounces of simazine, and I'd put 32 ounces of 2,4-D, that or something like that. That was what I'd go out and spray. Well, Poa annua is becoming more and more of a pain, and I went to this InView presentation recently, and I've been hearing about this for a while, but they have a couple of different combinations that they market it as. One is what they call dual defense, and the other is pre-3. Well, the dual defense is spectacle with Celsius, and the pre-3 is spectacle with simazine and tribute total. Now, when I heard that, I was like, I don't want to pay for that. That sounds expensive. I did a couple things. One, splitting the fall application into 2 applications instead of just one. Well, that obviously helps on the cost. But it's not just the cost. That the way they explained to me was it's more effective. So it does a couple things. One, it keeps the active ingredient in the soil, in the top 1.5 inches of soil longer, because you're putting out 3.5. I did 3.5 ounces. They said whatever you're doing, just split it. I was doing 6.5 ounces. If I'd split that, it'd be 3.25. I'm not that bad at math. I went to 3.5. So some people are doing 8 or 9. If you want to split it and just do split out. So I did one in September, maybe into October, and the second one I started late October on into November. That's what I'm still doing now. And the idea is you're going to keep the active ingredient in the top 1.5 inches soil. It's going to help the weed control. But by not putting so much out at one time in the large one dose, you're hopefully not getting that active ingredient down further into the soil, which could possibly cause some root pruning if that's a concern. So I did that, and I did the dual defense where I added Celsius. Now, before you flip out and say, well, isn't that expensive? Because I used to just use Celsius for spot treating. What I did, they recommended, I heard different rates. Okay, I heard 2.5 to 3.5. So I went this year at the 2.5. So I'm going to try it. I did 3.5 ounces of spectacle, 2.5 ounces of Celsius. The Celsius comes in a 10-ounce bottle, so you're using a fourth of the bottle. I don't know what you pay for it and all that. I bought it on EOP, and I bought a good bit of it, so I got But let's just say, for argument's sake, and it may be a little different, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 per bottle. Now that's probably the regular price. Going to be a little bit more than that, but if you get on EOP and stuff like that, you might get it cheap. So $100, $25 would be the 2.5 ounce rate that I use. $25 per acre, because that 2.5 ounces is a fourth of a bottle. Fourth of 100 is $25. So $25 per acre, that's not terrible. Okay, so that's what I did. I did the Celsius and the Spectacle. Now, I may not fully understand how well it's going to work until next year. I'll see how much POA some of these yards have. And to be honest, I'm not expecting 100% perfection, but I would like to see some improvement because Spectacle is becoming more difficult to control. And I did not do the pre-3. I'm just coming back with another round of Spectacle, 3.5 ounces, and then the 32 ounces of Simenzine. So we'll see what kind of results we get. If you have some yards that are just don't respond to that, I want to see compared to last year, how well did it work. And if, maybe you got a few tough yards, even with a tribute total, it's not like the high rate of tribute total, which I think is like 3.2 ounces per acre. So it's 1 ounce. So yes, tribute total is not a cheap product. But at 1 ounce, it's not horribly expensive if you had a few problem yards with POA and you wanted to do that pre-3. The difference there is the Celsius is going to do a better job of controlling like young POA, not so good as it gets more mature, where the true total could handle a little bit more mature POA. So I would say, and what I've been told is, if you're going to use the Celsius, more like October time frame. If you're going to use once you get in November, the Celsius is not going to be as effective, and you probably need to go with the tribute total. So I did that as well this year. Again, won't know the results 100% until next year to see how well it's working. And I'm actually doing some tests. One thing I'm doing on my yard, I had a little bit of perennial ryegrass left over. And so I had sprayed Spectacle on part of my yard. I'm making a video out of this. I think it's going to be interesting. I sprayed Spectacle on part of my yard, and part of my yard I didn't spray Spectacle. So I took this ryegrass and I spread it over the part that I had sprayed the Spectacle and the part that I didn't spray the Spectacle. And I want to see the difference in how much ryegrass germinates where I didn't spray Spectacle versus where I did spray Spectacle. I'm looking out the window now I went out there yesterday. This was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I looked out there and it was coming up, in the areas where I did not spray Spectacle. But it's still real thin and hard to see on a video. So I want to let it mature a little bit where I can have something to show and then go back and say, look, this is how the Spectacle worked. So I'm kind of excited about that. Wallace says, as mentioned, seeded the Bermuda line in 2024. Okay, that makes more sense. Maybe you said that earlier. And you reseeded in 2025. It's come in, but having trouble spreading. What should I do? Been cutting it 2 inch since the lawn is uneven. Houston. I think again, without seeing it, like I plugged 4 acres or 3 acres roughly of my own Bermuda yard, and it was just dirt basically. And I just took plugs, didn't seed it. And once I got it going, the first year was terrible. It was drought. About all I could do to keep it alive. Well, I got it growing, and the next year it just took off. So I know you're saying you did it in 2024 and you reseeded in 2025. I wouldn't worry about any more seed. If you've got even 30% coverage, and I don't know what variety you use. I'm not super familiar with all the seeded varieties, but I know there's some good ones out there. But I would say next year, it's not going to do a whole lot right now. But when May of next year, put fertilizer on it. Now you can either use a quick release fertilizer and do it once a month, and just kind of feed it through the growing season, or like I do, get a slow release fertilizer but push the fertilizer to it. And I think I would do that instead of putting out more seed next year if it's still not thick. Because I think with fertilizer and water, and maybe you did fertilize, but now that it's there, I would say what's there, let's try to make it grow and spread. And I would, again, without seeing it, that would be my advice. Could you do more of these? Only if possible. I like being able to. Oh, he's saying more. I was like, more of what? He's talking about more of the live things. I was planning on doing some through the winter just because it's cold and I don't have. It's hard to make YouTube videos in the winter, to be honest with you, for lawn care. Because like, what am I going to go out there and show my brown? I got a brown yard, and here's some brown weeds on my brown yard, and let's talk about the color brown. There's not much you can talk about. So, yeah, I'll probably do these occasionally in the wintertime. In the spring, there's a lot more I can talk about out in the yard. I'd like to be able to bounce quick questions or hear others. I would one day want to join the mentor group. At the moment, I can't fit it into the budget. Okay. Well, yeah, and I'll evaluate the mentor group. We're going to finish up the year we started, run through the summer. After that, I may do, I don't know what I'll do, but thought about doing like a shorter kind of group, like instead of a 1 year thing, do like a 8-week intensive class instead of a 52-week slow intensive class. So I don't know, but thank you for that. I love the feedback. Is definitely helpful. So. Well, there's no more questions. I've been on here 41 minutes. If you got something last minute, would love to answer it. Have you had any ridiculous customers this year? Stories being dissatisfied, even though it's environmental culture? Yeah, I do a lot of times share those on YouTube. I try to not mention any names or do anything. And I try to do it not to like necessarily show that I was right or that the customer was wrong. I mean, sometimes that's how it comes across, but I try to, people that are in the lawn care business and watch the video, I think, well, if they see that I had a bad customer and this is how I handled it and it went good or bad, I don't know. It just helps people to relate to it and maybe give them some encouragement because I don't want to pretend. I try to be fairly transparent on YouTube. I don't want people to think that it's like, oh, Jason never has any problems. So the one I can think of this year, I went to his house. This is in the spring, okay? And he's got zoysia grass and different varieties of zoysia. Well, usually the fine bladed zoysia is more shade tolerant, like in our area, emerald zoysia, and the wider blade one's not quite as much so, like the Z52 or whatever. So he's got some of both. Well, he's got the wider blade one, and he's got a big oak tree with the roots, or I think it's oak tree, and he's got a bare spot. When I say a bare spot, I'm talking about like 2 feet by 2 feet maybe in his yard. It's not, I'm not talking about a huge spot, but it's right up next to his flower bed, right by this tree with the tree, the shade, the roots, all the issues. Well, he's out there, him and his wife are out there working in the flower bed, and I think they're pretty particular about the yard. So I pull up, I had no idea. I've been doing his yard for years. I never knew that he liked me or didn't like. He's always been fairly pleasant. I pull up and just kind of like, hey, how's it going? I'm out here going to spray the yard or whatever. And he comes over and he's like, hey, what can we gonna do about this bald spot? And it's been months ago, so I may get this story a little bit wrong, but I said, well, I don't know. I think he was asking me like what caused it or something. I said, well, you obviously got shade here. You got a big tree. You got roots, I said, it could be a number. I go through a same routine. I said, it could be who knows? There could have been a stump there years ago. There could be a lot of things. It could be something underground going on with the soil. Could just be shade. I'm not exactly sure. Well, my truck on the side says Alabama Lawn Pros. He looks over at my truck. He said, and this is where it kind of went downhill. But he said, I would expect somebody with pro written on the side of the truck to give me more than I don't know. He had an attitude about it. And I was like, okay, then you want to have an attitude. And for what happened, we talked and he was just rude and he actually turned his back and just started walking in. And as he's walking in, I said, hey, is that how you want to end this conversation? I thought that was just, you can be mad at one guy because you can't grow grass in the shade, but that's just rude, not like human interaction. This has nothing to do with lawns. I mean, is that the kind of person you are? You just turn your back, and walk away. You don't shake it. And he came back out, and anyway, we talked some more. It didn't go well, and he said, just go and do whatever you got to do. And I said, well, I don't, to be honest, I don't think I want to do whatever I was going to do. I don't like working for people that treat me like this. And he said, well, let's just end it right here now. And he shook my hand and walked away. And as he was walking off, I was probably frustrated. I said, well, I said, if you would treat people with respect, they might be willing to help you a little bit more. Well, so that ended, and I found out his brother-in-law was one of my customers. His brother-in-law calls me a few weeks later and cancels or texts me. I said, oh, yeah, I'm sure I didn't tell him this, but I imagine you talked with your brother-in-law. His brother-in-law had torpedo grass in his backyard, so basically no cure for that. So I didn't mind anyway, and I done told him he had torpedo grass. So I look back. Here's the thing. I look back at the text messages. The guy had asked me the same question a year ago. What about this bald spot? I had texted him a year ago and said, hey, almost a year to the date. I said, hey, the most shade tolerant grass, one of the most shade tolerant in our area would be emerald zoysia. I would recommend putting emerald zoysia in that area if you really want to fix it. Well, a year goes by. He didn't do it. I mean, he didn't do it, and he comes back out and blames the lawn guy why he can't get the grass. Well, I told and I didn't remember that conversation from a year ago that while I look back, I was like, I told him a year ago to put emerald zoysia there, and he never did it. And now he's still wondering why I can't get grass to grow in the shade. And anyway, so that frustrated me, and I just went ahead and texted him again. I think I said something along the lines of, hey, I should have handled that a little bit better. But I did want him to know, looks like I texted you a year ago and gave you a recommendation on what to do in that area, and you didn't follow my advice. So, at that point, I was like, he just wants to complain. I mean, I told him to go buy $8 worth of sod and put it down, and he didn't do it. And then he comes out and wonders why it's not fixed. So I'm not, So, yeah, there he got me all worked up again. But later that day, I had another guy that was rude at first, and then I thought, is this two in the same day? It's same situation, almost identical. But that one actually turned. I detailed this on YouTube. That one turned and went great. He's turned and was like super nice. Turned out he had lost a bunch of money in the stock market. Then he was back in April. The stock market went down. He's like, I'm sorry. He said, this ain't got nothing to do with you. He said, I lost a whole bunch of money in the stock market. Now the stock market did good after that, so I guess he treated me better. And his yard came in, looked better. But anyway, there's always something going on in people's lives that you don't know about. Jose's got one quick question, and we'll get to it in just a second. David says, St. Augustine lawn, having problems with Kalinga and Nutsedge. Currently using Blindside. It appears to get rid of Kalinga, but Nutsedge might need more apps or other products. Any recommendations? Like I said, I used Blindside is great for Kalinga and pretty good on the yellow Nutsedge, not as good on the purple Nutsedge. So for me, I use Certainty a lot, but nowadays you can get, well, I mean, I'm a Harrow's customer, and they don't sell to homeowners usually, but I use a product called Southside, which is the same active ingredient that's in Certainty. And so I actually blanketed yards with that, and it's good on Kalinga and Nutsedge. Southpaw is a new farm product that's also, it has the same active ingredient in it, and you could actually use it. And it should do a little bit better job on getting a little broad spectrum there with the Kalinga and the Nutsedge. There's other products like, again, you can just use Certainty. You could use, what's the one, like Soleros and all. It's going to be a little bit more expensive. There was the PBI Gordon that has the Vexus, and then now there's a liquid version of it. I forget what it's called. The liquid version cheaper, and they're saying it's like the greatest thing for Nutsedge. So anyway, point is, I use Southside, but you got to get that from Harrow's. If you can't do that, you can use Southpaw, which has that ingredient that's in Certainty, but it's going to be cheaper than Certainty, and it also will get broadleaf weeds as well. Saying also, I'm assuming you're pretty far south where you may not get cold weather. So depending on how cold it gets, this may be next year's problem if you let the cool weather hopefully knock it out. But if you don't get below freezing, you may have to use those. Jose says, what do you charge per application? Well, I mean, that's going to depend a lot on, I have a pricing chart. I'm not going to put it out here on YouTube right now, but I don't do it. I would say I don't charge separate application for the fertilizer. Now, the fertilizer is more expensive. You don't make as much on that. So you got to kind of average out your costs for the year and come up with a price. I mean, just to give you some ballpark number, if $10 per 1,000 square feet, is a ballpark number that's a lot of people will probably charge something like that. So meaning like if it's a 5,000 square foot yard, it's $50, 6,000, So a lot of people charge more than that. Some people charge less than that. That doesn't mean if you got a 2,000 square foot yard, you charge $20, but just to give you some idea of where you could go. And that's going to vary depending on the market. It's going to vary depending on the yard, the neighborhood, how much travel time, what your overhead is. There's a lot of factors involved. Yards, 80% weeds. Would you recommend resod and St. Augustine? For me, usually not. I mean, I guess it depends on what weeds you have and what you've done so far. If it's a bunch of weeds that can be controlled, then I try to control them and let the grass spread. If it's Dallas grass in a St. Augustine yard, that's a tough situation. And the other factor I would say, do I have 80% weeds because St. Augustine is really not the right grass for this lawn? Do I have the wrong grass? I had a customer, he has a centipede lawn. His kids out there playing, a little tiny yard. And his kids out there playing with ball all the time. It's constantly getting bare spots. He said, oh, that's home plate. That's first base. That's it's big bare spots. In the summer, it tries to recover. And it's just like he's just fighting an uphill battle. It's like, if it's no bigger than your yard is, I would just kill it and put down some zoysia. He's got shade. The centipede doesn't love the shade. I said, I would just put the zoysia down and be done with it. I mean, you're talking about 2 pallets maybe for how little his yard is. I don't know if he'll do that or not. But so for you, I'd say, is the St. Augustine the right grass? Like, is it, for the situation? If not, maybe a good time to kill it and get the right grass. But if it is the right grass and it's controllable weeds, then kill it and see if you can get the same. Grass struggles in yards where it's just covered with weed. You're not giving your grass chance to spread because of all the weed competition. So those would be how I would evaluate that. David says, thank you. He lives in South Florida. It may never get below freezing down there. We're talking about killing sedges and stuff. So that's a tough situation. Jose says, thank you. Scott says, thank you. And Jason, been watching you for a long time. Indian Springs Village here, right down the road. I think that is near Birmingham. Thanks a lot, Stephen, for watching the videos. All right, 53 minutes is lunchtime. That's enough for today. Thank y'all for being on here. Thank you to Yardbook for sponsoring the channel. And I use Yardbook and Grant Spray Clear to sponsor my channel for years. And it really does help keep the channel going. I've been on here for, like I said, almost 15 years. And of course, appreciate all you guys participating and watching the videos. We'll see you guys next time.